female reproductive system. This is the information that you'll put in on your notes for each section. You don't have to go word for word, paraphrase to the point where you understand what you're talking about. So, ovaries, two almond-shaped organs that produce the female egg cell. They're each the size of a peach pit, hence the picture of a peach. Okay? They produce the hormones estrogen and progesterone. So producing egg cells before the female is born stores them until release. So once again, women are born with as many eggs as they will ever have. Fallopian tube is a passageway to transport the egg from the ovary to the uterus, about the size of spaghetti noodles. They're not actually connected to the ovaries. They have those outer fingers, finger-like projections that kind of go in waves. And then we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about ovulation. But within the fallopian tubes, they are quite small, and the matchstick, that's another good representation of size. Do you remember last time where we were talking about one of the things that can happen to the fallopian tubes that makes infertility an issue? Scarring. Okay, and scarring on the fallopian tubes can occur from lots of different things, but one of the main things that they're finding more recently is in response to the female response to STDs and STIs. All right, so the uterus or womb is the organ that provides protection and nutrients and houses the unborn child. It's about the size and shape of a pear, only upside down, which you can kind of see from the diagram on your notes. And it's a muscular, thick-walled, hollow structure that increases to the size of a watermelon during pregnancy. It's around the second trimester, end of the second trimester. It's on your desk. Oh, you're good. At about the end of the second trimester, it's about the size of a soccer ball. And then by the time you give birth, it's about the size of a watermelon. Okay? Yeah. Lined with endometrium to prepare for the possible fertilized egg. The endometrium is then sloughed off as if an egg is not fertilized, and the material sloughed off is what we call menstruation. Okay. The cervix, this is the opening in the uterus that leads to the vagina. It holds the baby in the uterus, plus with mucus during pregnancy to prevent anything from getting into the amniotic sac and as protection for the child. Okay, the vagina or birth canal is the passageway leading from the female's external genital organs to the uterus. Three functions are an outlet for menstruation, passageway for sperm, and a birth canal. And conception is the fertilization of the ovum. I know I'm going kind of fast. Let me know if I need to slow down. We'll put all of this together so you can see where these structures all fit within the human body. Okay, some terms. Endometrium. Just covered this with the uterus. This is the lining of the uterus, provides nourishment for the fertilized egg. If it's not used, it is sloughed off via menstruation. Fertilization is when the sperm penetrates the ovum, and then it starts dividing. Ovum or egg, this is the female reproductive cell. It's the size of a pinhole. It's the largest cell in the female body. 200,000 eggs are present in the ovaries when the female is born, and about 400 to 500 eggs mature and are released over the lifetime. What does that mean in practical terms? You have 400 to 500 periods. Yep, you have 400 to 500 periods throughout your life. So much to look forward to. Ovulation is the releasing of the ovum from the ovary. So the egg moves to the surface of the ovary in a bubble, which bursts, and it pushes the egg into the opening of the fallopian tube. And it occurs approximately every 28 days. That number should sound very familiar. Though, interestingly enough, that is a statistical average. There's only about 4% of women that actually have a 28-day cycle. the state of carrying a developing fetus within the body. So while you're finishing those notes, my question is why? Why are we talking about terms? Why are we talking about terms in general as we get started with this? But why are we talking about human biology before we start talking about pregnancy? Why would this be important for us to cover? What do you think, Casey?
It's kind of hard to understand pregnancy if you don't know how it like works and how it happens.
This is true. It's just this mystical thing, and magically, stork brings the baby, right? That's not how it works. This is a beautiful miracle, but it's a kind of disgusting miracle too. So we want you to have all the information. Okay. So within these structures, you can see we've got a cross section on the left, cross section front view, and then also side view, so you can see where these organs are in relation to other things within the body. So on the left, top we have the oviduct, which is another term for the fallopian tube, which semi-connects not really to the ovaries on both sides. And we have two fallopian tubes that lead to the uterus, again, upside down pair, which is lined with endometrium. The base of the uterus is the cervix, thick muscular wall, and then the vagina. And on the right, you can see where those structures fit within the human body. So we'll start on the left. So the uterus is directly above the cervix. And I know in the left, the front cross-section, it's kind of showing that the ovaries and the fallopian tubes are, it looks like they're right directly next to the uterus, and they sort of are, but it's more like above, which you can see here in our side cross-section. So the uterus, based by the cervix, leading to the vagina, and then posterior to this is the rectum and anus, and then anterior would be, see where the uterus is, see where the urinary bladder is? Is it any wonder that, okay, we did say the size of a watermelon, right?
Yeah.
Right on top of the urinary bladder. Is it any wonder that pregnant women have to go to the bathroom all the time? No. Okay. So directly above the ureter, it's the tube leading from the kidneys to your urinary bladder, and then you have the urinary bladder, urethra that are directly posterior, and then the vulva, flaps of skin that keep foreign things, dirt, whatnot. Basically, because the female reproductive system is an open system, which we mentioned during the STDs and STIs, you're easier to infect, and there's lots of issues that can you can have lots of issues if you don't have proper hygiene, but the vulva is there to help with hygiene. Okay, ovulation and fertilization. So ovulation occurs when an egg is released from the ovary. After being released, the egg travels through the fallopian tube, enters the uterus. You're with me so far? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Usually people don't tend to have a huge problem with this. Ovulation doesn't tend to be the biggest issue with fertility for most women. Conception occurs when the egg is fertilized by one sperm. This normally occurs within the fallopian tube. The egg and sperm each contain 23 chromosomes. During conception, those chromosomes combine to provide 46 chromosomes needed to produce a human being. So at conception, you have all the genetic material you need to create a human being. Kind of cool. This newly formed cell begins to divide, and once it starts to divide, then we consider it, rather than a fertilized egg, we can call it a zygote. As the cells continue to divide, the zygote makes its way through the fallopian tube and enters the uterus. At this point, it's a clump of a bunch of divided cells. Once it enters the uterus and then lines the uterus, what do we call it? It has a new term. Question. It's called a fertilized egg at fertilization. Then it starts to divide. Then we call it a zygote. What's the new term once it's actually attached to the uterine lining?
fetus?
There you go. Zygotes divided many times by now is a group of cells. That group of cells bounces around the uterine wall until it finds an appropriate area to implant itself and begin forming what will soon become the placenta, the umbilical cord, and the amniotic sac, as well as the fetus. Now the term is fetus. This process is super complex, okay? If any step of that process is disrupted, progression ceases, all will be expelled. This expulsion is called menstruation. Very, very delicate process. Too high of temperatures can disrupt this. The tiniest things can disrupt this. Yes, question?
You like drink too?
I would. Sesame and yep. Okay. So some women ovulate from both ovaries or 2 eggs from 1 ovary during a cycle. This is where we get fraternal twins, right? Not identical, same parents. They will look only as similar as siblings look. So this is actually becoming a lot more common, and there's a kind of an interesting correlation that they're finding with the prevalence of we'll say, oral contraception, yes, birth control. With that, many people are using that to help regulate lots of different things. But with birth control, the chemical birth control basically tricks your body into thinking it's already pregnant. I don't know if you knew that's what it did. Tricks your body into thinking it's already pregnant. But that doesn't keep the ovaries from maturing and ripening the eggs like they're supposed to. So when people go off of birth control, when they decide I want to have children, then they have multiple ripe ova that are then released from the ovaries. So they're finding there's a correlation with women that have been on birth control and have gone off because they want to have children that are having multiple births because they have multiple of them that are ripe. So, and some of that's genetic as well. Okay. If both eggs are fertilized by a sperm, the result is fraternal twins. If the ovum is fertilized by one sperm and then completely divides during the zygote stage, completely divides into 2 separate cell masses, the result is identical twins because they have the same genetic markers. They have the same DNA. Interestingly enough, they don't have the same fingerprints. Don't know if you knew that. Fun fact of the day. Okay, an incomplete separation would result in Siamese twins. And we'll talk about that when we talk about multiple births and some problem pregnancies that can occur. So the menstrual cycle is a continuous process of passing blood and tissue lining of the uterus from the body that begins at puberty, continues through childbearing years, and ends with menopause. The average menstrual cycle is 28 days, but can vary 17 to 25 days and still be considered normal. There are 4 phases. Okay, first stage, menstrual phase. Days 1 to 5, endometrium is shed. Stage lasts about 5 days. It's a very clinical way to put this. Okay, stage 2, postmenstrual phase, days 6 to 9. The endometrium is very thin, but then it's starting to thicken, and egg is ripening, ready for release. That stage lasts about 4 days. The third stage is the intermenstrual phase and ovulation. That's days 10 to 14. Endometrium thickens more. The eggs release at the end of this stage. Stage lasts about 5 days. Fourth stage is the premenstrual phase, 15 to 28. The endometrium is at its thickest. PMS may occur during this stage, and that stage lasts about 14 days. I know, lots of information. And they say lasts about because everybody's cycle is just a little bit different. And eventually, you'll figure it all out. But in the meantime, sometimes this can be a surprise. Very exciting. Okay, visuals, because people need visuals sometimes. All right, starting with day 1. Ovum is starting to develop in the ovary.